Us today. I'm Sophia with Garden State Film Festival. It is the 21st anniversary of the film festival, over 230 films from around the world. And we are here talking with Nelson Downend. He is the writer, director, and producer of Unconditional. It is like a short film slash micro pilot. It's new media. It's really cool. And I'm really excited to talk to you about it, Nelson. Thank you for taking the time out to talk to me.
Oh, thank you, Sophie. It's really a pleasure to be here today.
Of course, and congratulations on your acceptance. It's not a surprise it got accepted. So before we get into talking about it, can you tell everyone watching a little bit about yourself and about Unconditional?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a screenwriter, and this is my first short film or first foray into making films. The piece called Unconditional was inspired by my daughter, who during the pandemic really started to contend with the idea of mortality for the first time. And so I wanted to tell the story about a father and daughter the child who's really kind of experiencing that existential crisis, like we all will at some point, and then a parent really realizing for the first time that this is something they can't really protect them from, that this is something a journey they'll have to take on their own.
Mm. Wow, so interesting that that's what brought on the inspiration of this story.
Mm.
And I have a niece and nephew. My niece is 8 years old, and she's always asking about death and mortality. So it's interesting that you went talking about these themes that are very, relatable and in a lot of film, but you did it in such an interesting way in Unconditional. So really awesome. How long did it take you to write the script for what we see in the Garden State Film Festival?
So it was on and off. I did it as a part of an MFA program at Stony Brook University. I was doing a TV writing MFA. And as part of it, we had to kind of create a micropilot that we would produce. So it was like an experience to be not only, I mean, we were always the writer, but to be the showrunner of your own little show and be involved in all aspects of production and casting and everything. But then afterwards, we were able to take what we did and work on it afterwards. So it probably only took me a few weeks or a couple weeks to write the draft, and then through classmates and notes to sort of hone in on the final script. And then we shot it over a period of 2 days.
Oh, wow. So what you shot for the MFA program, is that what we see, or did you go back and make any changes?
No, we spent a lot of time in post afterwards, what was not required at the time to completely finish the film. But yeah, so most of the time was spent in post, actually, which for me was a big learning curve. I'd never been through a full editing process before. Coloring, sound, mix, all of that was a very good learning experience.
Wow. Did you do all of those things yourself, the editing and sound and color design?
No, I was very fortunate to have a classmate. We were sort of trading off, working on each other's pictures. And so Jeff Bernier, who's one of my classmates and dear friend, he was the DP or co-DP and the editor for the film.
Wow. So I definitely want to ask you about what it was like working with your daughter.
Yeah.
Celeste plays Charlotte in the film, it sounds like such an amazing experience. What was it like directing your daughter? How did she feel about the role in the story?
It was interesting in the process because I knew she could do it. She is a very creative individual and a pretty decent actor, if I will say so. But, she'd never done anything like this before. So it was a bit of a risk, but I just really believed that she could pull it off. And because it was inspired by her, it was really kind of her story, which, we sort of talk about a little bit in the book, that the father reads to her in the story, that this story is for her. So I knew we wanted to commit to it. We didn't know exactly what we were getting ourselves into, but I think the end product turned out well, and she did a pretty phenomenal job.
Wow. So did you find that part challenging? Like, was there any challenges you ran into during this filming process?
Since it's my first, I think it ended up being an asset all the way through. Obviously, I could speak to her in a way that, a director may not talk to an actor all the time because we've just known each other her whole life.
Mhm.
And it also added a level of simplicity because of the COVID bubble that we were working through, that, she was living with me. We were already exposed to one another. We tried to treat it very professionally on set, where she had her own green room to wait in, staging
Oh,
areas and everything. We took it very seriously, but we shot most of this in our own apartment. And so she was very comfortable the whole time.
wow. And yeah, how did she feel about like the role in the story? Was it scary for her at all?
No, it's interesting. She's very proud of it. She obviously did early script reads, and so she knew the story. But I'm sure you're familiar, when you're making a movie, it's cut up and broken up in a way that isn't sort of so linear, and
Hmm.
there's no music, and we're asking her to show us different things over and over again, and so it takes a little bit of the thrilling nature out of the piece
Right.
in the eventual edit. So it was very I was very grateful that the process was not scary to her at all. She had a great time.
And talk to me about the other cast members who played the father in the film.
Yeah, David Townsend. He's a dear friend of mine. He's been acting a long time. You've probably seen him. He's been in TV shows, films, Broadway. He's a Juilliard graduate. He's a consummate pro, and I really think that was important for this piece because Celeste was so new to this. Bringing in David was he was such an asset because he made her comfortable. He showed a level of professionalism that she picked up on, and so the two of them together worked so beautifully. I think their chemistry worked really well. David has a daughter around the same age himself, so he kind of knows the job in and out of the world of film. So it ended up being a dream team to work with.
Wow, I can imagine. And he was super talented. They both did such an amazing job in this. So when it comes to you, I know that you have a lot of experience screenwriting and with lighting design. Was
Mm.
this your directorial debut?
It was, yeah. I've never done anything like this before. I spend most of my time behind a computer, or doing a lot of researching characters, but getting an opportunity to actually work with all the professionals, whether it was art direction, whether it was acting, whether it was camera, editing, sound mix, score, being able to collaborate with all of these artists was
Mm.
probably one of the best experiences I've had in this field.
Oh, I love that you said that. I definitely wanted to ask you what was the best experience, like the best part of this process. So definitely just collaborating, working with talented people.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that being something I'd never really gotten the opportunity to do before. So as a lighting designer, I've done it more as like in a supporting role where
Mhm.
it's someone else's work or piece that I'm trying to make the best it can be for them. And so this being mine, to have everyone sort of rally around and be supportive and bring their talents to this project, I really felt so cared for the entire time. It was a great experience, and I believe everybody's work really shines in the piece.
Absolutely. It was filmed so beautifully. And did you put like your own lighting design skills into this? Did you do the lighting design? Because there's that one scene with the lights that I
So
was
that, yeah, that was in my daughter's bedroom. So we were able to set that up probably a week and a half prior to shooting, and she and I worked together to sort of stage all the work with all the figures and the dolls, and so we did actually have all the lighting set up in that scene. But we actually had an amazing gaffer who was sort of a co-DP, Walter Strafford, and he actually did the gaffing for the shoot.
Oh, wow. So when it comes to other scripts that you've written, I know that some of your scripts have been in contests like Sundance, and it was a really impressive bio that you had. Have you ever wrote something in this genre, like a gothic fairy tale?
No, it's interesting. I don't tend to write a lot in the world of fantasy, but it seemed most suited. I started to think a lot about, because my daughter, in contemplating death and where we all sort of go in our minds at some point, it can become a bit macabre in our thinking. And she got into the idea of vampires and witches and Harry Potter. And so the world of fantasy really seemed like the right format for this story. And I thought a lot about what a father or parent's experience is in the same, and within the same story, and the things that I fantasize about, which is the fear of my daughter getting hurt or making bad choices or where her life will go if I don't do a good job. And so even the darker elements of this, where while it becomes a vampire piece, it's a fairy tale for her, but it's also a bit of a fairy tale for the parent as well.
Yeah. And I love that you said that. Do you think that both children and adults, parents and children can watch this film or series?
It's a great question. When we first did we had the first edit completed. My daughter asked if she could show it to her friends at school, and so I contacted the teachers who were amazing, and we talked about it, and they were able to show certain sequences. But the big concern was I was obviously writing a story about a child struggling with thoughts of their own mortality,
Hmm.
and I didn't want to kickstart that for another child of the same age if they weren't already in that sort of boat.
Right.
So I do think we stay on like a line where it's not quite as scary. It could be for like a young adult, but probably I'm not going to be showing it to anyone younger than the
Mm.
10-year-old age.
Right. Oh, that's so interesting. I think definitely my niece, who I was just talking about earlier, who's 8 years old, I want to show her this because I think that I know that when I was younger too, I questioned death. I think it's something that once you see it as a child, you question it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, and obviously we're in this world now where different children have a palette for different levels of, thrilling things or mystery or
Hmm.
psychological horror. You'll see a lot of that even in children's work. which I've
Right.
seen a
Video
lot more
games
of.
nowadays,
Totally. And I've
it's
seen more of it
everywhere.
now as a parent than I ever had imagined watching or viewing. So some things do go, I think, too far, and some things maybe not far enough. And
Mhm.
it is a challenge to find that the perfect range. And so I don't, I sort of basically talk to people before I let, have their kids watch it.
Mhm.
But a lot of the children have really enjoyed it, and the role play and the idea of vampires and the idea,
Yeah.
all those fantastical ideas can be a lot of fun if you're in the right mindset for it.
Absolutely. You definitely played that fine line really well and spoken like such a great parent that you talk to the parents first to be like, is this something you want your kid to watch? So
Yeah,
I respect that very much.
yeah.
So I would love to talk to you about the future for Unconditional. I know that it's kind of like a micro pilot and you have some ideas for the goals for the future. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so it was always intended to be developed as a larger piece or a larger body of work. And right now we're working on it as a 30-minute TV series. So we have a pilot written. We have now this film as a proof of concept, and we've mapped out the first several seasons of the series. So we're hopeful that it will have a life beyond the short. But even if it doesn't, we're so proud of the work that we have done with it. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But we are hopeful and we are pushing forward with the idea.
Oh, me too. So whether was there any other like artist or films or series that inspired you when it came to Unconditional?
Sure. Yeah, I think a number of things, like a lot of things came together. But there was a movie from when I was younger called Harold and Maude, which was sort of a macabre piece, but had a sweet, a very heartful approach to talking about the idea of death and about love and about relationships. So that was definitely something that I rewatched a couple times before making this. And then Only Lovers Left Alive is another one, a more recent one where, because I didn't have the intention to make a vampire story, but that's a movie that really focuses in on less about like vampire lore and aesthetic and more about what it would actually be like for a person to be alive for several hundred years. And do you get bored of life? Do you get bored of people? Do you get bored of things? So I like that sort of off the beaten path approach to a vampire story, more of the logistics about it. And that's where we try to come to this with about it, just a child who makes a wish, something
Mhm,
happens and she wakes up the next morning and it's occurred. And so
mhm,
what is her life like now? That was more the intrigue for us. And then even a lot of children's stories, I think, that idea of those fairy tales. I think The Runaway Bunny was a children's book about a parent. The child wanted to run away, and what would happen if I left? And the parent talked about finding a way to chase or go after their child, but to keep a distance, let them have their own life, their own
mhm,
journey, but while never really letting them go completely. And I thought that was a very beautiful idea. Originally, it might have been the book we read that father reads to the daughter in the movie, and then I
mhm.
decided to rewrite that as a totally different or new original
Oh,
story.
oh, wow, that is so interesting. So we're wrapping up on like the last 2 minutes, and I really want to ask you about Garden State Film Festival, why you submitted to this festival, and how it feels to be accepted.
I mean, it feels pretty amazing. It's a festival that I've known about for a number of years. I've applied before in the music composition category. Obviously, I live in New York City, and so this is a neighboring festival that does such an extraordinary job of pulling together incredible work and artists. And obviously, I have a lot of New Jersey love. My wife, who is one of the producing partners on this, is from New Jersey. We spent a lot of time out there. I've lived there in Jersey City for a number of years, and so it means a lot to actually be on our sort of home turf and actually get to share this movie with people.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm so happy that you're going to be able to be there for the screening. Will the daughter, be there as well, or the father?
We are talking about it. The trick of this too is that within the block there are other films, and we're not sure. Given her age, she's still very
Right.
young. So we've done one other festival with her, and it became an interesting challenge to bring her in and out of. But I would love for her to be there. She would have a blast, and I think she would also get to see how extraordinary the world of filmmaking is, and
Yeah.
what the Garden State Film Festival does for its artists, and what that world is like.
Absolutely. Well, Nelson, I mean, it's been really a pleasure just talking to you and learning about what inspired you when it came to Unconditional. So thank you so much. Let me tell everyone watching how they can see Unconditional. It will be playing Saturday, March 25th at the Asbury Hotel in the block 6 to 8 p.m. So definitely check it out. You guys can get tickets at www.gsff.org. You can get day passes, you can get tickets to just one screening, or you can get a Parkway pass for just $95. That'll get you in all the events, panels, screenings, the Filmmakers event, the Friday night gala, and you could also buy your tickets to the award ceremony, all on that website. So definitely check it out. Nelson, thank you again for joining us, and congratulations.
Yeah, thank you for everything. So thank you for your time, and I'll see you at the festival.
See you at the festival. Bye.